Okay, let's do some coloring. I'm going to do, of the assignment, I'm going to go ahead and do the aerial view. And these are the two pictures that are in your assignment. This shouldn't take a super long, I always say that, and then it's always an hour-long tape when I go to put it online. The rules are pretty much the same as doing your elevation. So you color these the same way. You color an elevation. I use the same sky. I use the same everything, only some of the stuff is sloping, whereas some of it isn't. In addition, you get to retrace the whole thing just like you did with the elevations. Let's see how well I make out. As usual, I like to start big. Start with the big areas. Work my way down to the small. Maybe there's enough green in this to last me. You'll see there's, much like with your site plans, there's just a lot of green. So we always hope that our marker will last throughout all the green. We do have a pond back here, it's right there. Hopefully I won't color it green by mistake. Now, as much fun as it is doing these at 8.5 by 11, because it goes wicked quick. I actually prefer doing an 11 by 17 drawing of this. The problem is you need an 11 by 17 printer and a scanner. But if you can get access to that, doing these a little bigger, although it takes a little more time, it's a lot easier to get in close to things. In the good old days, we used to do this on either 24-inch by 36-inch sheets, which wouldn't fit on this board, or we did 30 by 40-inch drawings, and those would take a long time and go through a lot of markers. That was too big. But 11 by 17 is really the Goldilocks spot for these. You can put in enough detail to do a decent drawing, and it doesn't take you forever to color and illustrate them. All right, think in terms of elevations, and what would the next big area be in this?
Roof.
I'd say roof or sky. I'll go right to roof. How's that sound? Let's see what we've got. I think that's the lightest gray I have. We're going to find out. Yeah, we'll make it work. Close enough. Same thing, I'm just laying down. My gray's getting a little tired, but this is a 30% gray. Got one coat on the roof. I'm going to move to my first coat on the sky. Anybody watch the Oscars? Did you see the big moment?
No, I turned it off before that.
You turned it off before that? I was out doing something and I walked in just when that went on. I was like, holy cow, this is getting serious. And Twitter is ablaze with opinions on it. Oh, I got water. Let's get our first coat of blue down on that. A bunch of glass. I don't know if that's glass or not. It is now. I'll put a little glass in there. No. I thought there used to be brick on this building, but I'm not showing any, so. Next we've got the building, and I would put a little bit of gray on the driveway. I'm just going to hit, I'm going to do the building first. For the building, I'm going to use I've got kind of a sand, just a really light. I missed a little gray on that roof. I got a little bit of red on the chimney, and I missed a tree. I very rarely use the fine tip end on these. If you've got the Prismacolors with that little end, I don't tend to use those because really this point here, depending on how you want to hold it, I can do a fat line, I can do a thin line, I can do a super thin line, all just with the angle of the, because of the chisel tip nature of it. You got quite a bit of flexibility, and I really don't find it any advantage to use that little, the little pointy end. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put a little gray in on my just a little in the corners for now. And I'll even put a little touch of it on the foundation that's exposed. Again, just a couple dots. I'm going to go ahead and next I'm going to put a second layer over all my trees of the green. Just the trees this time. And it's not going to be a super, and I'm filling in the whole tree. And as you can see, when it first goes down, it's a pronounced difference having the two layers, but then as it dries, not so much. I think I got them all. You can see them get a little bit darker, but again, it's not a whole lot. Next, back to the sky. We'll put our second layer on the sky. Is that the one? No, I don't think so. I've got two blues that look a lot. That might be it. That is not it. Alright, I'm going to assume this one's the one. I hope so. Alright, so now I'm going to just kind of put in a second coat on here. Boy, that does not look like a different blue to me, the same blue. What's that one? Yeah, that's better. I'll fix the mistake there. Again, I'm just doing blobs, but I'm doing them offset from the first ones. So I'm getting rid of that chain link fence look. I'll fix those other blobs in a few minutes. I'm going to lay my second gray down on the roof. Start at the bottom. Maybe put a touch up in the corners. Leaving a little white space, well, unfilled space. Alright, and then the building itself. And again, these are the same colors that I used before. And this makes such a big difference on the building. This second coat, just kind of do the bottom half of the walls. So it's just got a little bit more of a vivid color towards the bottom, and I put a little in at the top and in the corners. But mainly, just kind of go halfway up the walls with this and kind of feather it out. Again, I don't know how well you can see that on the projector, but it makes a huge difference. The difference between this down here and this up here. And it is a difference. I'm going to take the same blue I used before. I'm going to do half of the windows. Just the top half. Put my second layer on. Close enough, and I'm going to add a little bit of color to kind of the edges of the pond. maybe a couple dots in there. Just give it a little depth. Now I'm going to start working my greens, my next layer of greens on the trees. The next green I have is this, just to make sure it's not this. Yep, okay. So now I'm going to go through the trees and I'm going to do the bottom right 2/3 of them. So I'm going to do a full stripe on the bottom, and then I'm dotting. I'm putting a lot of dots in there, but you want to make sure you get the right side of the tree and then work over. And you know, in the elevations you wind up with 2 or 3 trees, and in the perspective you might wind up with 200 or 300. So it's, I exaggerate a little, but there's more than 2 or 3 here. So you'll spend a lot of time doing this. It's a different quantity of trees than the elevation, but the technique I use is the same. Once I'm done with this, when I introduce that bold second color, which isn't just another overlay of the same color, I'm going to go back at it with my light green, and we'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. This poor marker's starting to get tired. That looks like all the trees. I'm now going to take my other green, my original green, and I'm just going to really focus on where those 2 edges meet and kind of smudge it a little, and then bring it back all the way. So see where that edge is, where the green is? You want to just really hit that. If this was on tracing paper, this would actually blend. It doesn't tend to blend a whole lot with these, but we're rapidly making progress here. Once I'm done with this, I'm going to put another coat in the sky. See, I want to really just kind of hit those and then bring it all the way back. Alright, now I'm going to use that blue that I screwed up with, which is not that one. That one's fired. I might have a replacement for that. I'm going to go with this one. Alright, so now I'm going to that one's a little bigger than I like, but it'll be alright. I'm going to take the top of the windows and just put a little dab there. Here I just tend to do it over to the left. I don't know if there's a window there or not, but there is now. The roof, I'm probably going to hit that with the same beige that I used on the house. So just kind of warm it up. And then I'm going to hit it with some gray again and try and get that a little bolder. There's that. The chimney, I'm just going to go ahead and use, you know what, I've got this electric red, let's use it. Get myself in some trouble. Here I'm just putting a couple little dots at the bottom. Alright, I'm going to do another level. Actually, I'm going to take my original blue and then try to soften some of these a little bit. So I'm just kind of going over those, my dark blue spots. And I'm being a little random. I'm going over the spots, and I'm also putting stuff other places. It's not the best sky I've done today, but it'll do. I'm going to hit that gray on the roof again. See if I can really darken that up at all. And I've got one thing left to do for color. And really puddle it towards the bottom. See, I'd like it to stay that dark throughout, but it just won't. It'll lighten up. Back to the trees. I'm going to get my Evil Green, the darkest one I got. Now I'm just kind of touching the bottom and a little bit on the side. And we're going to do the same thing with this. That we did with our, so we've got three greens. I'm using a very dark green, a medium green, and a light green. The light green I used over everything. And the medium green I did for about 2/3 of the tree. And the dark green I'm just highlighting the bottom and the far edge of that. But as was the case when we took the number 2 green, the medium green, we then took the light green and tried to blend it a little. Now I'm going to take the number 3 green and use my number 2 green on top of that to try and make that roll a little better. Again, focusing on the edge. And it just starts to blend it a little. It's not, like I said, it's not like tracing paper where I could actually blend it a lot. But it does soften it a little. And those trees look kind of puffy, and we're going to call those trees pretty much good. Now what I want to do, and this you won't do in the elevation, if you'll notice, I want to put a couple more layers of green on the grass, and I'm going to do it only in certain spots. What I like to do, I'll start with my light green, which I almost didn't do, and I'm going to start at the building, and I'm going to work out from the building and put a second layer of that light green right by the edges of the building. And just kind of work my way out from the building. I'm then going to go to the corners and do the same thing. And I might even put a little back here, but not much. I'm mainly trying to make this halo by the base of the building of a darker green, a more vivid green. And it kind of just accentuates the building a little bit. And corner here, again, dot the corners a little bit. And it just gives that grass a little bit more character. I suppose there's more I could do color-wise, but I'm actually pretty happy with it where it is now. So, what's the next step?
Put the yellow in the trees in this one too.
Not yet. You know what? Let's do it. That one, the yellow, because it's not the marker, I can do that either before or after I use the Sharpie. So let's do it before. And it does make a difference. I mean, take a look at the trees on the right versus the trees on the left. And it does look better. So thank you for reminding me to do that.
That's my favorite part.
It is a fun part. It's like putting down the property line in the site plan. It's not a lot of work, and it has a nice impact. I think it just wants more. It's a big tree. It's really just yellow and right up. All right. Now it's time. And we did put a piece of tracing paper down first. I didn't say it, but we know that was important. Let's start filling in the lines. How are we doing for time? We're in pretty good shape, so it feels like it's got a little life left in it. Now, what I might do is kind of go a little bit backwards in that I might use my fat Sharpie first. Hey, did anybody lose a scale last week? Check your scales to see if you have two of them. Because I found one laying around and I grabbed it. But then asked me where I grabbed it from, and I can't tell you which side of the room it was, because I don't remember. Again, profile line just goes around the outside edge. I don't like that. Yeah, make sure there's an overhang there. There's the profile. Next I'm going to do my shadows. I'm going to start under the eaves. Windows. And as was the case before, this is an unfortunate but necessary step that you have to trace over all the black. So a little shadow there. Alright, so I got the shadows on, and you can start to see that pop up. I'm going to focus kind of on this area of the drawing and not do all the line work. But let's see what happens to the roof. I really wish that my tape would stuck. We'll do the main lines first. It's just tracing at this point, but you can start to see the building's starting to pop a little bit. I try and do my diagonal, my horizontal lines first, because they're a pain, because they're all angled. You have to do those circles too. Let me get the windows blocked out first. haven't done the mullions yet. I'm almost considering them texture. But you can already start to see the building pop. Just by putting these black lines over it, which is why it's such an important step, because it looks really muddy and mushy before I do this. As I mentioned before, when I used to do this by hand all the time, I didn't do this part because I'd figured out a way to do it in Photoshop or GIMP, where I'd basically take the black lines and superimpose them over the colored drawing, and it saved me all this time. You're welcome to experiment with that and see if you have any luck with it. I think if you go back in some of my older videos, I might show it, probably in like last year's how to do the final perspective, how to do the final drawings. I think I might have gone into a way of doing it. I didn't do it in, well, when I did those, these are going to be tricky. This drawing was originally 11 by 17 and it was scaled down. So what that means is all the lines are a lot thinner than your pen. So you've got to go real easy with these lines. Kind of go quick. Play your marker right, there we go. You'll find with these Sharpies that the faster you go, the thinner the line. And because you have to slow down near the end, it makes a nice hit-go hit. Or it makes somewhat of a hit-go hit. All right, again, you're starting to see that house pop up a little more. I keep finding lines I didn't get to. Go ahead and do the ground lines now. I like to draw the curves first and then bring the straight lines to them. that background stripe in there. There's not much to it, but it makes a difference where you do it. I'll do the trees in a minute. I'd heard that March comes in like a lion and goes out like a lamb. And I believe it was 19 degrees when I took my kids to school this morning. So I'm waiting for that lamb. Most of my straight lines now. Just a few verticals here. Now I'm going to start getting some of these trees. I'm going to get the edges of the lake and the mulch beds. Okay, I'm going to start with this. Do the double line around it just like we did in the plan. In the elevation you don't have to do that because there's no... I didn't have a straight line there. Put that in. Any place there's grass butting up to a hard surface. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's see. Oops, I got carried away with that one. Yes, I did. I have a green foundation. Oh well. Alright, let's get some trees. I'm going to do some trees near the house. And of course the last thing I would do after I get the trees done is I might throw a little bit of texture in there. Trees always take longer than the little ones. Well, I wasn't going to trace all the trees, but since you guys insisted. As was the case with the plans and the elevations, retracing the drawing takes almost as long or longer than the coloring itself. But it tightens everything up a great deal. Now when I'm doing these strokes, I'm not exactly matching what was under there, but I'm pretty close. For those that are trying to figure out how to do this reverse umbrella stroke, got a nice opportunity to trace it right there. And just a simple act of tracing over it would help you get it. Alright, let's start adding a little texture. Oh, hang on a minute. I'm going to put the Janelle line in there. For texture on the building, I wouldn't go super crazy. In actuality, some of the texture, the light texture that's coming through, actually isn't working too bad. Put a couple lines in there. The roof might need it a little. And here, because it's already drawn, you don't have to worry about the directions. You do have to worry about lines on the doors though, which I forgot to do. Again, as you're going around the drawing, you'll be like, oops, I forgot a line here and there. Or I forgot to color this. Alright, roof. The roof is important for that texture. That one I want. I also forgot some lines. By the way, if you wanted to, when you're sketching it out, and you were having a problem putting the texture in on the roof, in SketchUp you could just draw vertical lines right on the roof, and they'd be some really nice guidelines for you. Just put a couple in there, and okay. Half of a half. Half of a half. I wasn't going to trace the whole thing, but I hate leaving it partially done. And if you'll notice, when I'm doing some of these textured lines, I'm only doing part of them. And that's okay. It reads enough. Alright, all I've got left to do is I'm going to put a couple dots on the pavement and I'm going to do my grass lines. Got some dots you can just trace on there already. And you've got grass lines that you can trace also. I was even considering not putting these grass lines in with the pen because the light ones are kinda cool, but the reality is I think it looks better if you trace them over. You mentioned the yellow stripe as being one of your favorite parts with the trees. I love doing the grass lines. Because it just all of a sudden, for not a lot of effort, it fills up a lot of space and gives it a lot of character. Anybody see anything they think I'm missing? I'm calling it. I'll leave it up here. If you want, I'd like you folks to, here, let me stop recording.